The drama surrounding Vyacheslav Datsik is nothing short of legendary. Known as the Mad Russian, or Red Tarzan, Datsik has carved a brutal path through the world of combat sports, leaving a trail of destruction in his wake. His ferocity inside the ring, combined with his chaotic and unpredictable nature outside of it, has made him one of the most feared and infamous figures in combat sports history. But the story of Datsik is more than just a tale of violence. It's a story of raw power, unrelenting rage, and a career that has been as unpredictable as the man himself. This is the story of Vyacheslav Datsik, an unpredictable force in the world of combat who has shaken the very foundations of the sport. Born in 1980 in Russia, Vyacheslav Datsik's journey into the world of combat sports was not one that followed a traditional path. From a young age, he was known for his violent tendencies and wild behavior. He was constantly getting into street fights, gaining a reputation as someone who was always ready for conflict. By the time he was 18 years old, Datsik had already suffered 16 concussions, a testament to his reckless nature and relentless pursuit of combat. His life was shaped by violence, and he embraced it as a way of life, with no regard for the consequences. One day, Datsik found himself watching a fight featuring the legendary future UFC champion, Andrei Arlovsky. However, fate had other plans. Arlovsky's opponent failed to show up, and the entire arena was left disappointed. But Datsik, ever the wild card, didn't let the opportunity pass him by. In a move that would later define his career, he volunteered to step into the ring and fight Arlovsky. The crowd was stunned by his audacity, but the bell rang, and the two fighters wasted no time. From the moment they locked eyes, the chaos began. Arlovsky, a seasoned and elite fighter, quickly demonstrated why he was one of the best. He skillfully and effortlessly dismantled Datsik, showing him the power of true martial arts. Like a matador to a raging bull, Arlovsky controlled the fight with ease, leaving Datsik battered and bruised. It seemed as though the wild Russian would be heading home with yet another concussion, adding to his growing list of injuries. But just as the fight seemed destined to end in Datsik's humiliation, something extraordinary happened. In one explosive moment, Datsik unleashed a punch that sent Arlovsky to the canvas. The crowd gasped, and Datsik had just made his mark on the world of combat sports. That punch was the turning point in Datsik's life. It was in that moment that he realized he could legally harm people in the ring without facing the consequences of his reckless behavior outside of it. With this new understanding of his power, Datsik made the decision to pursue professional combat sports. From that day forward, every opponent he faced would feel like a gladiator stepping into the Colosseum to face a savage beast. But while Datsik's career in the ring began to rise, his behavior outside the ring remained just as wild. Between fights, he alternated between training for his next bout and committing armed robberies, living a life of chaos that mirrored his in-ring persona. His ability to switch between brutal violence in the ring and dangerous crime outside of it only made him more notorious. His time in combat sports would eventually come to an abrupt halt when he was sentenced to 10 years in prison for his crimes. Even in prison, Datsik's love for violence did not die. When he was finally released, instead of rejoining society and seeking a normal life, he retreated into the wild forests of Russia, living as a recluse. It seemed like the world had seen the last of the Mad Russian. But Datsik was not content to fade into obscurity. His blood still burned with a desire for violent combat, and soon enough, he made his return to the world of fighting, this time with even more rage than before. Upon his return, Datsik's first opponent was none other than Alexander Emelianenko, the younger brother of the legendary Fedor Emelianenko. The fight was set to be an explosive one, but it ended in a stunning display of Datsik's overwhelming power. In just 10 seconds, Datsik sent Emelianenko crashing to the ground, his body broken and battered. The power that Datsik had unleashed was so intense that it stunned everyone in the audience. This was a man who didn't just fight, he destroyed his opponents with a ferocity that seemed to have no equal. Datsik's rise through the ranks of combat sports continued with match after match, where he overwhelmed his opponents with his sheer force and brutality. He was a fighter who operated on pure instinct, a man who had no regard for traditional fighting techniques and no concern for defense. He relied solely on his raw power and the chaos that he brought to the ring. His next opponent was another formidable challenger, the British knockout artist Kofi King. But just like all of Datsic's previous opponents, King was no match for the Red Tarzan's fury. From the very first bell, Datsic began pounding King's head with brutal force, and within moments, the fight was over. King had been reduced to a mere joke in the face of Datsic's power. But it wasn't long before Datsic faced a fighter who might be his equal in terms of raw violence, Geronimo dos Santos, a fighter known as the cook in the ring because of his brutal ability to turn his opponents into rare steaks. At the press conference before the fight, Dos Santos tried to intimidate Datsic with his own brand of madness, but Datsic quickly proved who the true savage was. When the two fighters met in the ring, Dos Santos was overpowered from the very start. Datsic's raw power sent Dos Santos crashing to the canvas time and time again. The Brazilian fighter, once full of confidence, was left crushed and defeated, his dreams of victory shattered by the unstoppable force that was Datsic. Next came the legendary Brazilian fighter, Antonio Bigfoot Silva, a man who had defeated some of the biggest names in combat sports. Many expected Silva to be the one to finally stop Datsic's reign of terror. But once again, Datsic defied expectations. The bell rang, and Datsic unleashed a fury on Silva that left the Brazilian helpless. Silva, despite his size and strength, was no match for Datsic's overwhelming aggression. His legs remained standing, but his spirit had already left the fight. Datsic's power was so overwhelming that Silva had no choice but to accept the inevitable. The fight ended with Datsic's signature roar, a declaration that he was the king of the ring. After Bigfoot, Datsic faced yet another challenge, former Glory champion Salo Cavallari. This fight was supposed to be one of Datsic's toughest tests, but it quickly became clear that the Brazilian had nothing to counter the Russian's brutality. Datsic performed a savage dance, a deadly samba that left Cavallari looking helpless and outclassed. The Brazilian had no answer for Datsic's power, and soon he was left crumpled on the canvas. In 2020, Datsic faced yet another challenge, this time taking on two opponents at once. The two men foolishly thought they could overpower him together, but they quickly learned that cornering a beast only brings destruction. Datsic tore through them with brutal efficiency, battering them into submission as if they were mere children. The first opponent was knocked out cold, while the second was thrown over the ropes and left a broken shell of a man. The referee had no choice but to step in and save him from further punishment, but it was clear that Datsic was on another level entirely. Vyacheslav Datsic's story is one of the most unique and brutal in the world of combat sports. His raw power, unrefined technique, and utter disregard for the rules have made him a living legend. He is a fighter who commands respect from all who watch, and even more from those who face him. But despite his savage nature in the ring, Datsic is also a loving father and husband. His desire to fight, to destroy, is driven not only by his love for chaos but by his desire to secure a future for his family. For all his madness, there is still humanity in him. A man who fights not just for himself, but for those he loves. As Vyacheslav Datsik continues to make his mark on the world of combat sports, one question remains. Who is truly stronger, Datsik, Butterbean, or Tank Abbott? The debate rages on, but one thing is certain. Vyacheslav Datsik's name will forever be etched in the annals of combat sports history. What do you think? Who do you believe is the strongest fighter? Let us know in the comments below. And don't forget to like and subscribe for more thrilling stories from the world of combat sports.